I think all of our leaders are resolved. Everyone in this administration wants to reshore semiconductor production. There may be some disagreements about exactly what that looks like. It authorized $53 billion worth of incentives for private companies investing in semiconductor manufacturing, R&D, and workforce development.
Good morning. Welcome again to the Washington Post. I'm David J. Lynch, Post Global Economics correspondent. I'm thrilled to be joined this morning by Senator Young. And as we've got limited time, let's dive right into it. We'll start with an easy question.
Sure, of course.
The administration has focused a lot on reshoring of manufacturing, bringing back jobs and work that went abroad during the age of so-called hyper-globalization. But only 8% of the workforce now is employed in factories. Is the administration overdoing the emphasis on manufacturing? What do you think is the appropriate role for manufacturing in the future economic landscape? What's the right way to think about this?
Well, the right way to think about it is to employ tariffs to achieve various goals. You can employ tariffs, as we've seen, to encourage your allies and partners to invest more in their own militaries. For example, we've had some measure of success with respect to our NATO allies in particular, taking seriously those obligations, continuing to invest in their own militaries. I think important debates will continue to happen as to the extent to which those are attributable to the tariffs, because some of that began beforehand. But I think at least marginally that has yielded successes. Tariffs can also be employed for strictly trade-related concession leverage. We've seen some of that. We've seen Vietnam offer a zero-for-zero trade arrangement. We have seen the Europeans make some concessions that we hadn't seen in a long period of time. I'd like to see more, but it's certainly a start. So that's justifiable. I think with respect to reshoring manufacturing, though, a key focus of this forum, the emphasis should not be on trying to reshore everything that is manufactured. That would be untenable. Economically, that is not something that, frankly, is even desirable. We don't want people employed in lower value-added manufacturing jobs. We instead want our workers to move up the value chain wherever possible. That means advanced manufacturing. And it also means manufacturing key components and technologies that have some relationship to our national security and our economic security. National security, I think, is self-explanatory to most Americans. Economic security is a more malleable concept, but in short, we want to take risk out of our value chains so that we are not at the mercy of our adversaries or even of natural disasters for key components. We discovered the importance of being more resilient and less dependent on others during the course of the global pandemic as it relates to all kinds of things, from drugs to semiconductors. And that's become ever more important the more we examine the issue and the more our relations with China continue to be unhealthy and adversarial. So I think I acknowledge, in terms of the administration's approach, successes. I think there have been a number, but I also want to be clear. We need to focus in a more disciplined way moving forward on reshoring those technologies, those inputs that are essential to our national and economic security. If we do that, David, I think we will realize the sort of job creation and economic opportunities that Americans have been promised. And then we can have a deeper and more extended conversations about the merits of reshoring other things like textiles that are of lower value added.
Now, since Inauguration Day, the president has made up to, I think, 50 different tariff announcements.
Yes.
Announcements, changes, revisions, pauses. This is according to a tally by my colleague Jeff Stein here at the Post. I know you've called for Congress to reclaim some of its constitutional prerogative over tariffs.
Yes.
Tariffs are a tax. Congress has the power to tax. That's in the Constitution. How do your fellow senators feel about that, particularly in the Republican caucus? Do you see any prospect of Congress actually moving forward on that?
Well, let my colleagues' public statements stand for themselves. I would suggest that some of them may have strong opinions that have not been vocalized, right? Because they want to remain effective, which is understandable, right? But as far as and so your pointed question was, I want to make sure I'm not avoiding it, David.
No, I know you have been among those saying Congress needs to reclaim some of the power it's delegated, but there doesn't seem to be a heck of a lot of motion in that direction.
No, Congress is very good at giving up responsibilities, right? Many people campaign on making hard decisions, and then seemingly upon arrival and after taking the oath of office, in fairly short order, they become very adept at delegating responsibility from the legislative branch to the executive branch, and it then becomes really difficult to claw back. And every president I've served with, every president I've spent any time studying seems to have a penchant for using the full measure of the office's responsibility. There are very few presidents that demonstrate heroic levels of self-restraint. Thomas Jefferson offered a big piece of real estate, decided to accommodate his views on the appropriate role of the federal government. We had the Louisiana Purchase, right? So every president, to some extent, tries to utilize all the various authorities given to him thus far and her sometime. I guess where I would like to focus are on what you will regard as a more interesting area, which is some of those gray areas, right? Areas like international economic emergencies. This is the area where, even at this early stage of this presidency, some of us said, listen, a president, and here is how I look at it, a president should not have to bear the full burden of declaring what constitutes an emergency, and therefore all of the responsibilities associated with carrying out the executive responsibilities of government in the midst of an emergency. They should have the sanction of the people's representative for those extraordinary actions. We should have, in short, accountability for any decisions made, wise or unwise, under those authorities. I've applied the same line of logic to authorizing military force, not why we're here today, but it demonstrates a certain, I think, consistency in how I approach many of these issues. Congress has to do its job, and that's going to require, over a period of time, I think, reclaiming certain responsibilities. I haven't witnessed a lot of reclaiming, though, in my lifetime, so it remains an open question whether or not we can accomplish that.
Sure.
Right?
I want to go to a question from somebody in the audience, which goes to, I think, one of the main questions over the reshoring effort, which is, even if we are able to effectively use tariffs to encourage the return of work, there's a question about finding the workers to do the jobs. Yes. Manufacturers, as you know, even today are constantly complaining about not being able to find enough people to fill their vacancies. Merrill Davis from Texas asks, what's the biggest disconnect between what employers need over the next decade and how we're preparing today's students, and how do we fix it? It being the disconnect, I imagine. In 60 seconds or less.
Yeah. Goodness. We need to up our game. As the father of 4 children, 3 of whom are still in the pre-K through 14 stage. I guess my oldest daughter just finished her first year at university, so they're all in pre-K through 14, which are key years. And we need to significantly focus on pre-K through 14 investments, best practices, outcomes. I know this has been a focus for a long period of time by a lot of smart people, particularly at the state and local levels. There's intermittently interest in this topic. Here at the federal level, early in the Reagan administration, I know that there was a framing of this issue as a national security concern. I still regard this as the foremost national security concern. We need, at a very young age, to be stimulating the intellectual curiosity of our children and challenging them and exposing them to material that allows them to become realize their full human potential as they age. And I just feel like we're falling way short, benchmarked against other countries. We lack the level of rigor that is required, and so more focus there, particularly for lower income students.
Excuse me.
And this plays into economic opportunity, though I stated I begin with national security. We have low rates of economic mobility in this country, upward and downward. That's antithetical to the American narrative, the American dream. And not just the lack of upward, the lack of downward. No one should feel too secure. That's not freedom. That's not freedom. That's a stagnant sort of environment. And so I want more churn, and that happens through legal immigration, because with fresh eyes and incredible work ethics, people who come to this country, and their children, next generation, they oftentimes do remarkable things, but it's harder to realize the opportunities ahead of us and to be instilled with the tools to seize them if our schooling system is not optimized. So I can't give you a 10-point plan to turn it around, but somebody needs to own this, right? And I just don't think we talk enough about this.
Let me ask you about something that you've...
have 60 seconds in the Senate.
...been very outspoken about. You co-authored with Matt Pottinger an op-ed in the Post a couple months ago, arguing that federal funding for basic research is an absolutely vital ingredient to our competitiveness, future economic prosperity, et cetera, and that it is consistent with the president's promise of a new golden age. I don't think the ink was dry on that op-ed before the president started taking a chainsaw to federally funded research institutes. National Science Foundation has sought to defund some of our best universities, to be clear, to defund the research, federally funded research at these universities. That seems to me to be going in directly opposite direction of what you are calling for. What's your view of what's happening on that score? And
I think you summed it up pretty well.
Yeah. So what do we do about it? This is vital ingredient, and the president's taking a chainsaw to it.
So listen, I don't think the president, as it relates to this issue, is being well served by some of the folks who, despite a number of us speaking up, calling to the attention the fact that today I'm reading in the newspaper we have the European Union beginning to entertain enticement formalized programs to get the best-in-class fundamental science and applied science researchers out of the United States into the EU. I mean, we're in the midst of a competition. And, you know, to use a heartland analogy, I mean, we're throwing our seed corn in the well. Yeah. So it's really short-sighted. I wish our business community, to sort of call them out, had been more vocal on this issue. They're focused on all kinds of other issues, but they could be helpful in amplifying the importance to their business models beyond the next quarterly return and probably beyond the tenure of the current C-suite occupants, but the sustainable business and innovation viability of our best-in-class companies is tied to federal research, ultimately, much of it. I recognize that enormous research is made within firms and by firms, but there are public goods created through our university system and our research laboratories and all the rest, the whole ecosystem that benefit us in unpredictable ways, and so many of those are harnessed by the private sector. Others are harnessed by our military, by our intelligence community, and public health agencies, and so this is our model. And here's what I would say, and this is a broader point about this whole era. If we want to disrupt our model, and I think almost every facet of our life is due for some measure of disruption. Because our leaders have become, I think, inattentive to the concerns of many overlooked people, and they become distant, and I actually agree with that. Mm-hmm. But if you're going to disrupt, then have a plan to rebuild, right? And so if not the long-standing model for federal research, which has barnacles on its vessel, right, then point the way for something better. And I'm all in to optimize the system, but let's not deconstruct before having any, even vague renderings of what the next generation of research looks like.
Yeah. I want to give you a chance in the minute and a half we have left to talk about shipbuilding, because yes. I know you've pushed in that area as well. This is an example of the sort of heavy industry that just isn't really done in this country anymore.
Yes.
We produce a relative handful of ships
yeah.
relative to China. How realistic is it, now that the horse is completely out of the barn, to get that back? That's going to take decades, isn't it?
It's going to take a while.
Yeah.
We have 80 commercial vessels, which has really been where my work is. We have other folks focused more narrowly on the U.S. Navy and rebuilding it. But we have 80 U.S. flag commercial vessels right now, and some merchant mariners that we can put on those vessels. The aim is to get to 250 vessels over the next 10 years. Is it doable? All the experts, most of the experts tell us yes. However, it's going to require investments. Through the tax code, mostly to crowd in foreign capital and expertise, which ought to be welcome. And it will also take investments in our workforce. Most of this actually won't cost money to the federal treasury, though. It will just be regulatory optimization and taking the existing stream of revenues through port fees, cargo fees, going through our locks and dams, putting those revenue streams into a new trust fund, dedicated trust fund for these various purposes, and then working the plan, being very disciplined and working the plan. But it's a national security issue. China can produce 1,000+ vessels a year. We can produce 5.
Right.
5. And so the fact that, frankly, Congress has not been particularly focused on this and focused on what I would charitably call more ancillary issues from time to time strikes me as sort of an indictment. So among the things that need to be disrupted is the culture of inattention and and sort of the influencer culture on Congress, we need to focus on stuff like this.
Yeah.
We need to focus on R&D, where since 2000, China has increased through their brute force economics public research 16-fold. Just last year, they went up 8.5%. The United States, we're still thinking through our plan.
Yeah.
So we can do this, and this is this generation's charge. It is to disrupt. I completely agree with that, but it's also to build, just as the post-World War II generation built new institutions that served us well for generations.
Yeah, great. Well, sadly, we're out of time. I think we could easily keep you here for another half an hour, but I know you've got other things to do.
Thank you, sir.
But
Thanks
I want
for the
to
opportunity.
thank Senator Young for joining us today.